Welcome, everyone. I'm Sharice Magoon, and I work in the Department of Lifelong Learning at UT Health San Antonio School of Nursing. I will be moderating the session today. You were sent an email this morning from Cynthia Gutierrez, and it explained about how to complete the evaluation and to receive your e-certificate. So if you have any questions regarding that, Cindy will type her email in the chat, and after the session, you can reach out to her. This symposium is sponsored by Texas Health and Human Services Commission in partnership with UT Health San Antonio School of Nursing. Texas recognizes June as Neonatal Abstinence Syndrome Month. You can learn more by reading House Bill 405. During the session today, we ask that you keep your camera and your microphones off, and that if you will hold your questions until the end. If you think of one and you want to type it in the chat, what I'll do is I'll read it once the presentation's over and the presenters can address it. Or at the end, if you want to unmic, you can state your question and talk to the presenters. We are recording this session. I'd like to introduce our two presenters. The first one is Gilbert Gonzales, who is the director of the Department of Behavioral and Mental Health. Gilbert has more than 30 years of experience in the field of substance abuse and mental health crisis prevention and in treatment provision as a clinician, university faculty, project program director, and policy advisor. He has been responsible for development of program and implementation for community-wide jail diversion services. Mr. Gonzales is the first director for Bexar County's new mental health department. Mr. Gonzales has served as a member of the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, National Leadership Forum for Behavioral Health and Criminal Justice Services, the National Stepping Up Initiative, the White House Data Justice Initiative, and is an active member of the Board of Directors for the National Association of Counties. He has also served as the chair of the Justice Committee of the National Association of Community Behavioral Health Disabilities Directors. Our other presenter today is Mike Lozito, who is the Director of Judicial Services for Bexar County. Mr. Lozito has 30 years criminal justice experience as a pretrial technician, youth services officer, parole supervisor, section director, and regional director. A large portion of his career with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, he was acknowledged by the Texas Corrections Association as the Outstanding Adult Corrections Administrator for 2008. He has begun his career with Bexar County in June of 2010 as a Judicial Support Services Manager responsible for the Pretrial Services Office and Indigent Defense Attorney appointments. Mr. Lozito has been the Director of Judicial Services since 2011. He is responsible for administering the activities of the Justice Intake and Assessment Center, Pretrial Service Office, the Behavioral Health Department, Jail Population Impact Control Unit, and the Medical Examiner's Office, Crime Investigation Laboratory, Court Collections, Problem-Solving Court Programs, and the Dispute Resolution Center. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. It's a privilege to be with you here today, particularly in being the last presentation of many wonderful presentations that you have hopefully have had the opportunity to see. Today, what we would like to do is to provide you with an overview of the jail diversion strategies and programs for our most vulnerable populations, including pregnant and parenting women and substance abuse services. We're going to provide a description of our overall approach to behavioral health crisis and the systems approach to indigent care and a continuum of care that's absolutely critical. We'll talk a little bit about the therapeutic system and how to access it. And then later on, we will provide an overall view of how the county is looking at its criminal justice population and ensuring access to care. There are many pieces to this puzzle. as you can see, because we're merging the mental health system, the justice system, within the context of a system-wide approach. In today's presentation, we're going to go through the various steps, the strategies, and then we're going to end with a look at an overall model that we've been using consistently for almost the last decades. And as you can see here on the screen, we're going to be covering quite a few items today. Our hope is that you get a view of the system-wide approach and those aspects that are critical to address. So let me introduce, you've already been introduced to Mike. Mike will talk a little bit about the Office of Criminal Justice. Mike?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gilbert. Appreciate the invitation to appear before you and provide you the information. I'm sure when we talk about criminal justice and the criminal justice system, it's very confusing, even for me. I've been in this business over 30 years, and it's forever changing how the processes work. We hope for the better. But one of the things that we realize is that the jail ends up being the largest mental health facility in the county. Currently, we have over 4,600 inmates in the Bexar County Jail. And when we're doing our assessments on these individuals, we're finding that 1 in 3, where nationally it's 1 in 5 may present issues with mental health. In the jail, we're seeing 1 in 3. So it really shows that this is an issue for us. And we hope by today's presentations that you can see there are a number of things that are happening in Bexar County. I think Bexar County is probably one of the most progressive counties in the United States. We're recognized nationally for a lot of the programs that we have. But most of that is because of individuals like you, because of the collaboration. It's a lot of individuals putting in their say in giving advice and how we build these programs with our stakeholders, and we're able to get these out to the individuals that need access. We're not there 100%, but we're working in the right direction. And one of the right directions was Gilbert being the behavioral health director. He was in 2014, I guess when we started that, was the only behavioral health director for a county in the state of Texas. And I think it's still that way. And also, he has a very good background in working with programs and diversion programs. So it was a good blend in really looking at it. Then the other thing I have to say also is that we're very blessed, I feel on our end of it, that we have a commissioner's court that is dedicated to therapeutic justice and trying to address the behaviors of individuals to correct it, right? So if they're not out there and they're not assaultive and they may have drug issues or whatever the issues, that we can get them into programming to help divert them from the system. And we feel that is the best public safety, is by taking somebody that needs treatment to get them into treatment and to improve their lives. So I'll turn that over to you, Gilbert, and you can talk about
Thank you, Mike.
the next section.
So in this next section, we're going to talk a little bit about the, there you go, about the Department of Behavioral Health. And Mike really underscored the importance. I was originally with the center, and Mike approached me and asked about this thought that Commissioner's Court wanted to expand a department that focused just on behavioral health. And at that time, it was just mentioned as mental health. And so when I saw this, it was such an incredible opportunity, because now there was an opportunity to have someone at a commissioner's court at a county level devoted entirely and completely to the advancement of the increasing of the availability of services, addressing gaps in continuity of care, monitoring services, and advising commissioner's court on suggestions on how best to increase services for the community at large. So you see here the mission of the department. We are still the only Commissioners Court-based behavioral health department. And our essential duties are essentially to advise, monitor, and ensure the constant and never-ending increase of therapeutic services. So what I'd like to do next is tell you a little bit about what our approach is to addressing behavioral health, define behavioral health, and then lay the groundwork for everything else you're going to hear during the rest of this presentation, because you're going to hear about several different programs and so forth. It will sound like a lot, but there really is a context, a frame that we're following. Actually, there's two of them. So this is not a bullseye, but in fact, actually, really it is. I'd like to bring your attention to just the first two circles, the bullseye circle and then the second circle. So one of our approaches is to understand that the nature of mental illness is such that we will be approaching a traffic light. And when we approach that traffic light and we get stopped, that represents the individual being in crisis, being in need of incredible support, if not 24 hours, 7 days a week, inpatient care, and so forth. If we do our jobs correct and apply those healing therapies, that individual will move into the yellow zone or the yellow light. And that's where they'll be discharged from the hospital. They'll need quite a bit of support. There's still need for supervision, for assistance, for closer relationships. But if we do our jobs right, then they're going to go into the green zone, which means now they're ready to move forward. They're ready to work on things like reestablishing their lives, to do supportive employment, to work on residential housing, and so forth. But yet we also know the nature of mental illness is such that at one point you may be green, but you may be going back to red and yellow. So the community at large needs to be ready to support whatever level that this individual is. Now, let me take a little time to define behavioral health. So I'll bet some of us on this webinar can remember the days when, if you were a substance abuse provider, you only worked on substance abuse. You didn't work with those mentally ill people. And if you worked with mental illness, you didn't work with those substance abuse people. And there was this chasm. So fortunately, we have merged the two, and now we provide behavioral health services, meaning we provide services for mental illness and for substance abuse and for intellectual disability, developmental disabilities, disorders, and much, much more. And within that context, we provide other specialty services like neonatal services that you heard about a week or two ago from Tina Cisneros, as she talked about the Center for Healthcare Services neonatal absence. So that's just the first circle. The second circle really has to do with the consistency of how we look at things. We will always look to identify mental illness and substance abuse at the earliest possible point, wherever that individual is, where the earliest possible point. Secondly, we want to ensure that whatever we do, we continuously and in an ongoing fashion provide access to care, address things like transportation. Being able to get into care doesn't do you any good if you can't get to that care. So access to care is critical, that we're constantly evolving access to care. And finally, and this is the big one, and that is continuity of care. If there isn't a consistent handoff, then that care there'll be a gap, and that individual will not be able to progress as rapidly as they could. So it's critical that we always identify, provide increased access to care, and provide the continuity of of that care. Now, the rest of the circles all have to do with how we work and expand within the community. Obviously, women that are pregnant and parenting need extended support systems, not just one system. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that system looks like, some of the programs that we're using, and then we're going to fall back on the overall strategy for the entire system of our approach. So first of all, crisis. Obviously, if we would prefer to provide services and needs on a pre-crisis basis, that is before an individual ever gets to that red light zone. Remember that traffic light? So community crisis services are that red light zone. And so they typically come to us from the community or from police. And these are two important distinctions. Community crisis referrals, you've got mom or dad calling for help. And the person maybe is not quite at a crisis level or getting there. So we have services available on a 24-hour basis that can intervene. If, however, and unfortunately, because at times there is some unusual behavior that is associated with behavioral health needs or mental illness, police are involved. And so there's another pathway there. So our role is to address as many pathways as we possibly can. So shameless plug here. In 2003, we really started the development of jail diversion programs. And I put this slide up because I'd like to encourage, if you have not had an opportunity to see the HBO documentary, Earning Joe, that documentary was actually made here, highlighting the programs and the systems of care that were provided on an ongoing basis. Earning, the documentary looks at it from the perspective of two police officers that have gone to crisis intervention training, specialty training, as they approach taking a person to the first level of care, and then the second level of care, and then the third level of care. So you hear me describe these levels of care and these next step kinds of things. So a couple of years ago, many of our stakeholders came together, and the intent was to bring forth a systems map that would address all of the things that persons with mental illness or substance abuse. For example, on this little map, if you look at the right-hand side, you'll see residential substance use treatment. That's just one of the buildings. But then if you look over here, a little more to the left, you have the criminal justice path, and that's going in somewhere. And then you see crisis, then you see long-term inpatients, then you see housing, you see inpatient. So you see all the variability that providing treatment for behavioral health entails. And it's absolutely critical that we make this an integrated system of care. So for the next couple of slides, what I'd like to do is just kind of go over some of the programs that we have, systems of care that we have specifically for pregnant and parenting women. This is by no means an exhaustive listing. There are others. So let me start with the first one, and we're back. Center for Healthcare Services is the local mental health authority for Bexar County. We happen to have just one, and we're very fortunate to have the center. The center does many, many, many things, and it's not just these items that I've listed, but wide. If you go to their website, Center for Healthcare Services, or chcsbc.org, you'll see the array of services. But for purposes of this presentation, we have the Restoration Center, and that is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week facility that is available for individuals that are in crisis that do not require contact with law enforcement. So a mom with a child that is needing some services can call the center, and they'll call the crisis number and they'll get directed. If the mom or the dad themselves are going into a postpartum acute depression, or they're not feeling well, or they can literally go to the Restoration Center. The center provides screening for psychiatric services. They provide screening for substance abuse services. They have they have a sobering unit. They have a detox unit. You see co-occurring psychiatric and substance use disorders unit there as well. Again, referring to Tina Cisneros' presentation, which was 2 presentations ago, on neonatal abstinence syndrome residential program, an extensive program, and you can tell it was its own subject. And then the Mommy's Intensive Outpatient Program. Well, I tell you, there's nothing like going to that unit. You walk to the halls and you see the pictures of these children that have been helped, and these moms. It's quite something. Next, we'll talk specifically about something that the county has funded and is directly involved with. And there's several aspects to the partnership between Crosspoint Residential Services and, of course, our very own UT Health Science, and that's the Casa Mia Recovery Home for Women and Children, specializing for pregnant and parenting women suffering from opioid. It's one of the very few programs here in Texas. I think probably the closest that we have to the Bambi program in Houston, which provides long-term care for a year. Now, Crosspoint is also partnering with, the county has provided additional dollars to expand from Casa Mia's current 40 beds, that of course is geared at primarily pregnant and parenting women with opioid use disorders, and is developing a women's wellness campus. Now, this campus is set to have approximately 60 to 90 new beds. Will provide neonatal services as are provided at Casa Mia, but will also be available in general for women with needing substance abuse services. So here you'll see, just to give you a feel of some of the kinds of services that they provided. They're crucial classes on child development, on nutrition, on substance use, substance recovery, healthcare, parenting, child safety, life skills, and so forth. Incredible program. They're doing incredible work. We hope to have the Women's Wellness Campus available for the fall of 23. So fingers crossed on that. And next, we have Alpha Home. And again, Alpha Home has been around for quite some time. And they do an incredible job. They do offer a 12-step model of recovery and provide all of the services, again, specifically for women. So we cannot leave the discussion of services without talking a little bit about Haven for Hope. The 8th wonder of the world, at least for us. $101 million, 37-acre, 1,000-bed homeless campus. It has so much more there. They do have services for women. We have jail diversion services for there. The Restoration Center is co-located very close to, and they are doing a lion's share of the incredible work that's necessary to provide treatment whenever it's needed, and particularly in instances where homelessness is impacting. So you've heard me go through all kinds of things. So now I'll ask Mike will introduce you to probably one of the most significant frameworks we have ever had. In 2003, we were working with a lady by the name of Nancy Griffin and Mark Muntz, and they came up with this model called the sequential intercept model. Now, Bexar County had a model as well, but our model had 47 intercept points, and their model only had 5 sections. So simplicity, they went out, they did it. But it has been since used across the nation as the format for addressing services in criminal justice. Mike, I believe the next slide is yours, sir.
Thank you, Gilbert. So this is the sequential intercept model, and this has also been adopted. The legislative session about 2 sessions ago instituted the Judicial Commission on Mental Health, which gave a specific task to the Supreme Court of Texas to really look at individuals in the criminal justice system with mental health issues, and are there better ways to facilitate them and divert them. And they have adopted the sequential intercept model as part of their teaching tool when they're working with judges and attorneys and prosecutors as to where there are opportunities in the system to divert individuals so that they can gain access to health services. And I think the big thing is, one of the studies that we had done was they asked the question, what do we criminalize all the drug cases, or do we start looking at it as a health issue, and how we want to deal with that? Or do we continue to imprison these individuals where they don't get help in the system? So it's really trying to make that paradigm shift to look at certain offenses in a way that that we can make diversion. So when the intercept model first came out, it had intercept 1, which was law enforcement, 911. So that was basically the first interaction that an individual has with the police, and what are things that could happen for law enforcement to divert individuals out of the system. And we'll talk about a little bit about some of the stuff we've done with STRAC, the Southwest Texas Regional Advisory Council, that works really closely with hospitals for trauma and those things, like Uvalde circumstances now with the recent deaths that we had here, the 51 deaths with the smuggling. They work really closely with emergency services and on that end of it. So we have the South Texas Crisis Collaboration. So we'll talk about that, where there are opportunities for certain types of offenses for the law enforcement to divert them rather than jail to a psychiatric facility. So we'll show you where that's at and what's happened with that. And then intercept 2 is they're in the jail. Police officers decided to bring them in. And now what can you do with that person as they come in, the intake portion of the jail? Are there opportunities there in intercept 2 for identifying individuals with substance abuse and mental health issues that we could divert them into other types of programs rather than incarcerate them in jail? And I think one of the things that, I don't know if you're familiar with or not, there was a study done by the Arnold Foundation where they went through and they looked at individuals that were incarcerated. And what they found was if a person is incarcerated one day, they have a 10% chance of recidivism. And recidivism means that an individual picks up a new offense. So they're charged with a new offense, 10% for 1 day. And then when they found 2 days in jail, 20%. And then when they were incarcerated for 3 days or more, it was 40 to 60% recidivism for the individuals. So the study showed that to do whatever you can so individuals don't remain in the system, especially your nonviolent individuals, because they tend to learn crime, they tend to make new friends, and their peer supports now become individuals that probably are not going to be helpful to them. So taking the Arnold study in mind, it's like what you really have to do with a nonviolent person and trying to make the resources that are available to divert them. The third one is actually those individuals that are in jail, so they're not diverted, and what programs can they get into? Can we put them into our specialty courts? And as you know, or you may not be aware, Bexar County, we have over 14 different specialty courts that provide services where a judge actually works as part of the team in the rehabilitation of an individual through treatment. So we have the adult drug courts, the mental health court, we have veterans treatment courts, both felony and misdemeanor. We have a DWI court for individuals that have been arrested for more than one DWI. We even have the Esperanza court, which is a prostitution court. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but individuals on their third prostitution arrest can be placed in prison and placed there for up to 2 years in a prison facility for prostitution charges. And they may be victims of trafficking in that process, but they are in prison. So we have a specialized court that works with those individuals, trying to divert them from the system and getting them services on there. So we're very fortunate here to have all these different types of specialty courts to work with individuals to try and get them on the right path. And then Intercept 4 has to deal with reentry. So the individual coming out of prison or out of jail, how does that work? And, you know, I always like to look at NASA when somebody goes up in space, and the space shuttle used to come down, and they used to prepare. One of the biggest things that they used to prepare for was reentry of that individual or that ship to come in, and all the processes and checkoffs that had to happen for those individuals to have a safe reentry. And that's what you try to do with individuals as they leave the jail or prison, to have as many programs available for them so that they will not fall back into crime or using drugs again. And the Intercept 5 is the actual community corrections, which has to deal with somebody being on probation or on parole, and the activities that occur there and the services that occur there. Unfortunately, what happens in most places is services don't come until Intercept 5, which is pretty sad. Because that's usually the funded ends of it. We're fortunate in Bexar County because we are able to, the Commissioner's Court has given us money for diversion through 1, 2, 3, and 4, not just in 5. So we have the ability now to do those things. And I also wanted to point out, it was Intercept 1 through 5, and they added Intercept 0 was the new one that they added. And it's saying, okay, you have individuals that don't get in contact with the law, and they go into services and they have crisis, but a lot of them have insurance, right? And they have the ability to get into programs to go to Laurel Ridge or San Antonio Behavioral. But if you are an individual that's indigent, you don't have insurance, you're unfunded, your access points ends up being 911, law enforcement, jail, or those entry points. And that's what we're really trying to change. And this next slide here basically shows some of the programs and what we're trying to do in Bexar County. And I want to allude to that map. It's kind of the Disneyland map. Everybody's been to Disneyland or Six Flags, and you have the map when you first go in, and you want to go to, Children's Land or these different places in there to, experience what they have, Frontierland, whatever it could be. And unfortunately, when we did our mapping, Crisis Land was number one, and that is not good for any community, for you to have to be in crisis before you can receive services. So we want to change that, and that's what we're looking to do, and we're putting bits and pieces now to really look at those and find out where those services can be to assist individuals. So you can see there are a number of services, and we'll talk about those. So the next slide, Gilbert. So one of the points on there is that Intercept 2 is the county built what we call the Justice Intake and Assessment Annex. This was a $13 million project that allowed for us to, instead of having individuals in cells when they're arrested, they actually go in. It's like the airport. It's an open booking facility. You go in, you behave, you can sit there. There's TVs. There are free telephones, and so you can call family members, call your bondsman in order to for that individual to get out. And then we also have what they call the mental health clinicians, and we were the first facility in the state of Texas to incorporate that, where we have 24/7, 356 days a year, the mental health clinicians there to talk to individuals, to do an assessment. We have a public defender there. Believe it or not, in most counties in the state of Texas, your first hearing in front of a judge, you did not have the right to an attorney. And so we put in the public defender's office, and they are there to help provide services for the individual before they go in front of a judge and hear their charges, and can ask the judge to dismiss the charges if the charges don't have any substance at all. And generally that would take months for a person to sit in jail, and they'll dismiss the case to find out that there was not enough evidence to hold that person. So we are putting checks and balances in our system with this justice intake facility. The district attorney is there, pretrial services is there, the district clerk's office, and our magistrates are there 24/7. So it gives us that opportunity to look at the person, do an assessment, present that case to the judge and say, look, judge, we do understand that this individual has had a history of the drugs. We've done an assessment. We have a plan for them, or they have a history of mental illness, and they've stopped taking their medications. We have the doctor. So we have a program, and we work with Center for Healthcare Services, where if they're diverted into this program, the Center for Healthcare Services actually picks them up at the jail facility on release, and they'll take them back either to their home, or they'll take them back to the facility to see a doctor and to get them situated. So this is, we found this to be a great opportunity, and we're seeing some very good outcomes with this on recidivism. If we have individuals participating in this program, going to see their counselors, social services, any wraparound services, our general recidivism rate's around 17%. What we find on this one is around 4% recidivism rate if you can take somebody, get them services, and get them help. So there are really good programs out there. The other one that we developed is our IDD programs on disability services. We actually now have, where the county is funding 2 support services individuals, clinicians that work through Alamo Council of Governments, and they connect them to services. So they actually work in the jail, they interview the individuals, and they get them to whatever services, and they can talk to the judge right there and explain to the judge, we have these residential services for them, or we can help the family. They need some help, so they need some assistance. So there are different programs like service coordination, and helping them get benefits if they don't have benefits in there. And we also did add 2 clinicians from the Center for Healthcare Services to actually be in the jail for individuals that are in the jail to discharge and to connect for continuity of care of services for them. So we are really trying on our end to make sure individuals are being connected to services, because you see the outcomes and how we can improve that. And those outcomes mean improved public safety for us as citizens. Next slide. I talked a little bit about the Southwest Texas Crisis Collaboration. So this is where generally before we had this, a police officer would have 2 choices. If a person had mental health issues and they couldn't control them, they could take them to an emergency room and sit there for a while with the individual, or they could take them to the jail and process them, and they'd be out of there in 3 hours with an offense report, and they could be back on the streets. So we thought it'd be great if we had a navigation system that allowed a 3rd option for the police officer. So if this person was in crisis, they were harmful for themselves or maybe others, they can do an emergency detention. We have a navigation 24/7 system where they call the officer, they tell them, hey, we have this facility that's available, and they'll take you there in 15 minutes. So they're there within 15 minutes, they're back on patrol in the streets, and there's another entity that's working, treatment specialists that are working with them for psychiatric emergency services. So you can see that we had over 12,595 navigations. Only 1% of those actually ended up going to jail. So that was a great diversion on that end of it. So you can see on this next slide what happened, like how many went to psychiatric facilities, how many actually had to go into a hospital for emergency detention. And then it tells you the numbers on there for jail, and then how many were self-navigated. But I think this is, it's a great slide that really shows if you've got cooperation, and this is countywide, that the system is, it's sheriff's office, SAPD, and via police, everybody that's been trained, CIT, crisis intervention trained, which I think about 95% of the officers have been trained in Bexar County for crisis intervention training. And that, so they have that ability now to identify and be able to take care of those services on there. The other thing that we do in the jail, before I go on, is they ask 4 questions to the individual. Every police officer, sheriff's deputy will ask 4 questions, and the 4 questions will be, have you ever tried to harm yourself? Are you currently contemplating to hurt yourself? Have you ever received medications for psychiatric services, or are you currently receiving services for mental health issues? And that's one of our triggers, besides some of the screening tools that we have to identify individuals coming into the jail for mental health issues. Go on to the cite and release. So this is a program too that our district attorney is doing now for lower level cases. So these are the lower level cases of marijuana, mostly, or certain drugs on the level that they've done these citations. And we've done it a little bit different than other counties have done this. The law enforcement will give them a citation, and then they're told to report to our reentry center, which is a facility that we have, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, where individuals that get out of jail can get help but we also have the reentry center where they report there. We have an assistant district attorney there and also a public defender. So when the person comes in, they meet with the public defender, the district attorney, and they work out a plan for them. So if they do A, B, C, and D, then those charges will be dismissed and they won't even be booked for that offense. Because one of the things that seems to happen for individuals is once you're booked for an offense, you don't even have to be convicted, you're booked, that follows you around for life. And that will always be on your record. And now, you know, electronic records are everywhere on there. And that's a very difficult thing to overcome, because employers will see that. Or, you know, you're trying to apply for an apartment and they see that you had an arrest for marijuana and you may not have been convicted for it, but it's on your record. And then they say, well, we're going to decline you on there. And what it does is it forces individuals into kind of seedier type living arrangements that may not be the best for their recovery. So we found that this is really working out really, really well. We have good outcomes for these individuals, and the program continues to grow, and we hope that law enforcement will utilize their discretion to do these citations so we can get individuals help at the front end. I mentioned also specialty courts. So we do have specialty courts in Bexar County, and there are a number of them on there. So this was one of the things at Commissioner's Court where we were honoring our specialty courts. So you can see there's a lot of work involved. It's not just, you know, a probation officer and overseeing them, whether they're conditions. It's a whole team. It's a case manager. It's a treatment provider. It's a judge. And the judge spends over 15 to 20 minutes of time with that person per month, individually recognizing their ups and their downs and as they move through the phases. So the reentry center, this is a facility, it's about a block and a half from the jail, and it has classrooms in there. We have individual counseling rooms. We have group counseling rooms. We have a computer lab. We help with employment. So we have what we call reentry specialists that are there. And as a person comes out of prison or out of the jail, or anybody can come in there and say, hey, I need to find a job. And then we can connect them with a job. We can connect them with training, housing services, utility assistance, rental assistance with Goodwill and their training opportunities. So we have a lot of outside nonprofits that come in there and actually provide services. And we also have faith-based services that come in and work with individuals. So we find that to be real rewarding. We've done some job fairs where we had over 1,000 individuals attend. We track their earnings from the job fair, those individuals that got jobs. And we found that out of some, you know, it was over $1 million every quarter that they had earned in there. So, you know, they are contributing to the economy and in a pro-social way. SMART program, I'll go over this real briefly, but this is our specialized multidisciplinary response unit. So this is the sheriff's office. So this is in the outer surrounding county. The city has started a program called San Antonio Core, which is similar, but it's where somebody calls 911. The dispatcher will ask questions and they'll determine if it's doesn't involve a weapon, that a special team, they come out. It's a specially trained deputy, a mental health deputy, an emergency technician, and a licensed counselor will go out on a call, and they will work with that person to get them into services on there. And the other thing is that's, I think, special about our program is we have peer support specialists that also work with them. So it's not just the emergency room circumstance where you come in, take care of it, and you're gone. This is now work with the person. They're off their meds. okay, they have a doctor, so that peer specialist, the licensed counselor, will work with them to get their medications, take them to the doctor's office or take them to the pharmacy to pick them up and help them. So we have, just an array of services that are out there that can help. So this is some of the data for the team. We're going to move this to 24/7. Hopefully in Commissioner's Court, we'll have a presentation of this probably in August to move this 24/7. Right now, we're covering peak hours of most calls, but I'd like to have this 24/7. So really good programs that are out there. I think our next step that we'd like to do is like open this up for questions. If you have questions, I see on there that I know that we have the task force and that is an ongoing, and hopefully we can come back and do that, but I want to leave time for questions.
We've got a few questions in the chat. I'll start moving through them. What is the average cost per person per intercept?
So our jail, we can tell you the jail cost. So for a mental health bed, it's about $250 a day. And for a regular bed, it's about $80 a day on there for them to be in jail. So Gilbert, you had those dollars, right, for intercept costs, like how much it costs for treatment for those individuals?
For example, when we're looking at the cost of diversion or the savings attributed to diversion, actually beginning in around 2000, we looked at the overall cost of what happens when one individual is taken to the jail and it's booked and is booked. So typically that is around, the lower estimate was as low as $50, which is kind of ridiculous. But if that person had mental illness, it was $250. So the difference was huge. If you can take that individual and divert them to a non-criminal justice-based system, then we have a greater chance of not only diverting from incarceration, but allowing for actual treatment. The studies have shown on the mental health side that for every dollar that's investment, you get a return of $7. That for every dollar that's invested in substance abuse services, you get returns of up to $5. So it doesn't only make sense, but it makes dollars and cents.
Awesome, thank you. Next question. What does the court do to help the person clean up their criminal record? Because most companies have a problem with anyone who does not have a clean record.
Right, there are programs that are out there. Matter of fact, there's and you can go to an attorney, and the attorney through the law, they have the ability to expunge their record on there. So basically the record's sealed and removed from the system on there if it goes through a court and a judge approves it. There are other sources too. There's a online service called Easy Expungements that actually is based here in Bexar County, and they're national, and they can do it for a lot less in the program. And then there are other programs like legal aid and stuff that will actually do it for those that just don't have the money to expunge their records. And some of it would, show them how. Nationally, there are projects like Operation Clean Slate, like in Pennsylvania and some other areas where they do, I think, a better job of doing these types of expungements.
Great. Somebody put on here, the issue that I have seen is that people go from no structure to 100% structure while incarcerated, and then back to no structure once they're discharged. How are folks supported once they are finished the program, discharge, etc.?
Yeah. So when they get out, it depends. The judge, if they're on probation, will determine what type of supervision that individual will have. But like probation department, they have what they call the Texas risk assessment, and so they do a pretty thorough assessment for the individual to determine what level of risk they are and what level of supervision they need in order to make, safe reentry back into society. So there are a lot of diagnostic tools that they do out there, and working with them and different types of programs, especially if they need treatment, then they'll have what they call specialized caseloads and lower caseload numbers for the officer so they can spend more time with them to help them.
Wonderful. I have a few comments. I'm going to read those. Housing and jobs seem to be a huge setback for early release.
Yeah. Gilbert, you want to?
Absolutely. That goes back to the continuum of care. We are human beings who have needs, and you need a relationship. You need to be productively engaged. You need to be able to have hope for the future. Those things are absolutely critical. Can you imagine if you don't know where you're going to sleep? You're barely surviving. So it's up to us to be able to meet the needs at the level that will increase that person's level of wellness.
One thing too, Gilbert, that we did with that task force we didn't get to talk about, but one of the things the Commissioners Court approved was we just released our RFQ to look at the San Antonio State Hospital grounds. As you know, that new state hospital is being built and will be open in 2024, and they're going to vacate a lot of the buildings and so forth. So we've issued a study to look at what those buildings will look like. What can we use them for? Can we use them for housing? Because we definitely, the individual that wrote the comment, we do not have enough residential stock out there for them, especially permanent supportive housing is a key. I think it was Twin Town Village or Town Twin on the east side is one of the projects the county is involved with in doing. I think it's age 50 and above, but more housing first type circumstances. So I hope that more of those projects come online. The city of San Antonio just passed their housing initiatives, and I think they set 25 million in there for permanent supportive housing projects. So hopefully we'll get to see more of those.
Very important comment.
One more comment, and then we have one more question. One of the problems we have here is that our psychiatric unit in our jail is horrible. They are restrained in a chair for a set period of time. And if they are suicidal, they are trapped in nude for hours at a time. It is very barbaric and traumatic for people that do not need that to happen to them. They need treatment like you seem to have, not archaic trauma.
That's so spot on, but effectively, County Judge Nelson Wolf in 2000 brought a health summit together specifically to address the criminalization of mental illness. And in fact, the criminalization of substance use. It is a disorder. It is a medical disorder. And so the whole impetus was to reduce, it was to provide treatment, but to reduce inappropriate incarcerations. And, the persons on the task force are on this call are absolutely right. Jail is no place to get treatment.
And I think one of the things we're doing right now, University Health has we're doing a study on there to look at exactly what you're talking about, how what types of services are being provided at the jail for mental health and recommendations on how to improve them. But the other thing I think that we're sorely missing in Bexar County is we don't have our own psychiatric facility. If you go to Houston, you go to Dallas, they just opened one. And I think Austin is going to do one, having their own county psychiatric facility. I think they're going to make a recommendation on that study, hopefully to let us know what size we need, maybe some plans on, and then where to build this particular facility. So I think that's what we need. And I know the sheriff has been very vocal about that there are individuals that are in his jail that don't need to be there. And the jail is just not the right environment to improve somebody's health, mental health.
Thank you. Question, do you have any programs for monitoring opioid use, overdose, or relapse in Bexar County after the individual has re-entered the community?
I believe I'd have to pass that. I'd have to refer to Dr. Potter on that. We don't have any specifically. Mike, do you know of any?
Yeah, well, we do the Narcan, from jail. So they actually have them there. And if a person wants them, they can pick the kits up and stuff for the Narcan. And we do that with probation and parole and training, all those individuals that work within the system. One of the things we're trying to do in the task force for pre-crisis is have a convening, but also a convening for the substance abuse providers, and trying to do a better job on that end for these types of circumstances, because in the law, there is an actual code that allows for diversion to a substance abuse facility for somebody. So say they overdosed and then the medic hits them with the Narcan, and they get up and they get mad because they lost their high and they're walking away, versus where if we had a system set up, we could divert that person, whether they wanted to go or not, into a facility to get help. So I think that's something that's sorely needed, but we just don't have enough beds for substance abuse for women, especially in the jail right now. We have, like I said, 4,600 individuals, 753 of those are women in there. They're about 16% of the jail population. And in the criminal justice system, women are about 8% of the jail population. So something's wrong there. But I think the reason for that is we don't have enough substance abuse beds for women in the community.
Thank you. Any final questions from the audience? You could type it in the chat or unmic real quick. All right. Well, we will say goodbye. We want to thank you both for being here and sharing all this important information about what's going on in Bexar County and the changes that y'all are making, and what you're looking to do in the future. This is some wonderful information, and we have shared your PowerPoint in the course for anybody that needs to reference it. Any final thoughts?
There are many challenges. We have done a lot, but there is a lot more to do. And I just want to assure everyone that I've never seen anyone. Commissioner's Court has behavioral health as its priority and addressing the systems approach. I love to use Mike's analogy of, we've got these highways with no off ramps, and there should be off ramps to treatment. There should be off ramps to improvement. And we're trying to build them as quick as we can, but we need a whole lot more of them. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I just want to appreciate the opportunity and working with everybody, and thank you for your interest in seeing what's happening. And hopefully, a couple of years from now, we can say we're in the pre-crisis mode and we're getting people treated at points of access that need to be treated.
Exactly. Well, thank you, and everybody have a wonderful day.
Have a good day.
You.